Welcome to Check Your Shelf podcast. I'm Jamie Hanna, and this episode I'm joined by Mallory McCormack to talk about Prince Harry's book Spare. Mallory will also tell us about a very unique online book club that she participates in. Then we'll wrap up with some recommendations from my favorite book reviewer, Oscar. Welcome back to our new episode of Check Your Shelf podcast. I'm here with one of my favorite people.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Jamie. You're one of my favorite people, too.
Mallory McCormack.
Hi. Nice to meet everybody.
She loves many of the same things and same people who I do. This is a very special episode for me because I've been wanting Mallory to come on to talk about this really cool online book club that she is in called the Bully Book Club. But she also, unbeknownst to me, is a huge Prince Harry fan. So she read Spare almost as quickly as I did. So we're going to start out talking about Prince Harry's autobiography.
Yes.
Spare. So what were your, what did you expect? And then kind of, did it live up to your expectations?
Yeah, so I think for me, the biggest thing was just like everybody, I feel like watched the Oprah interview and then watched the documentary on Netflix and actually binged it. We were on holiday, which I feel like I have to say since we're talking about British things. We were on holiday over in Ireland, and so I got to download it and watch it while we were on planes, which was great. And then that way I also didn't feel crazy when I started picking up their accent. But I say all of that to say that I really expected this book to dive a little bit deeper into some of the things that he touched on. I felt like we were going to get a lot of details as to specific incidents that had happened that were maybe alluded to. I also kind of thought maybe we would get a little bit more insight into his school portion, which I guess we'll probably talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, I think what I expected I got, but I also think there was a lot that I didn't expect that like blew me away in multiple ways.
And did you read the text or listen to the audiobook or both?
So I only read the text. I'm kind of afraid to download it because I'm afraid I will then need him to just read me the ABCs to sleep every night. Because watching him in interviews and stuff, I mean, he's so well spoken, but man, that accent, something about a good British accent. It's nice.
He could be a professional audiobook narrator. Like I went back and forth. I listened to it and I read the text.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I'm really glad that I did both because I have two friends who read the text, who kind of went in feeling the same way I did, kind of being pro Harry and anti-firm. And then after reading the text, they weren't as... It didn't get them like it got me. Like they came out of the out of reading the book like not being as full in support as they thought they would be. But I think when you listen to the book and you hear his tone and his inflection, and there are a couple of parts where it's like he doesn't get emotional, but you can feel like you hear that he's like really having to hold back because it's so upsetting when he's talking about, and a lot of it has to do with Meghan or his kids and things like that. So it was kind of a different experience.
Yeah, and I think there are a couple of things, now that you've said that, I would love to listen to like a couple of the stories in particular, especially about his first kill in action.
Yeah.
I think that would be really interesting to hear because reading it, I kind of got the tone that it's not that he necessarily wanted to do it, but it was his job. And so at that point, he was like, I have a job to do and I'm going to do what's best for the greater good. And so I think I kind of felt that theme throughout like the whole book. But I totally, at the end of it and picking up on the very protective of like people he loved, I feel like he truly is his mom in male form. Like yes. he is Papa Bear. Like don't mess with Papa Bear the way you didn't mess with Diana and Mama Bear and her kids. Like I really get that from him, and I feel like he probably embodies that just because that was something he was missing his whole life.
Yeah. And I like that you brought up Diana because one of the things that I've been a royal watcher my entire life. Like I remember I was like 4 or 5 years old. I remember watching Charles and Diana's wedding with my mother and my grandmother when it was like on TV. And as I've read things over the years and just kind of, I don't want to say become a amateur student, amateur scholar of things royal, I've always been like, they know what they're getting into. Like, I haven't had a lot of grace for like Diana or Fergie, but then seeing the documentary, reading his book, I really, really don't think Meghan had any idea, and he didn't know how to prepare her. I think that was important in the book, that he really pointed out there was only so much he could get her ready for.
Right. And I think, especially towards the end, when, you know, it's very well known, like when they stepped back from their roles and working for the institution, the firm, the horribleness, in my opinion, whatever you want to call it, when he got cut off financially, no one ever told him what to do, how to check a bank account. I mean, and you really pick up on that. And I almost felt really bad for him with that, because those are just normal life skills. And I think, to your point, that he didn't know how to prepare her, I'm glad he had her, though, because she had been forced to take care of herself. And, you know, like she said at one point, you know, and one of the things he says that she told him was her penmanship. You know, she did birthday party invitations and addressed them for extra money to just pay the rent. Like, I thought that was really cute that they kind of balanced each other out that way. But I think both of them had harsh realizations as to what they were getting into. But knowing that he wanted it more normal and realizing that's what his mom wanted for him and why, I thought that was a really cool, like, full circle moment.
Yeah, and that's such a good point about them balancing each other out. You're completely right.
Yeah, but good Lord, if somebody ever wants to take me on a cute little covert grocery shopping trip like they had, I'm down for it. Like, that just sounds like so much fun. So, yeah.
How about the PTSD? Like, did you? I feel like when he finally used that term, I was like, this has been a long time coming. Like, I just kind of exhaled, because through the whole book, I'm like, this kid. First of all, it was heartbreaking, heartbreaking. The thought that he went through, what was it, like 8 years of thinking that his mother might be alive. He made it so feasible in the book. Like, the way he described it, I was like, well, I could totally see why a kid would, you know, especially his age, would think that way. He doesn't have any aid in grieving. He doesn't, you know, there's no, he just doesn't have the help that he needed. And I know, to be fair, Charles says at the end that he should have maybe gotten him.
Right. But I think, too, even with Charles saying that, to me, it's almost like, and I think it's a generational thing, right? I'm trying not to stray too far from the book, but there are a lot of themes that I feel like are very prevalent in our everyday lives. But even he's 30 some odd years old, and Charles is still saying, my darling boy. Like, he's not a boy. He's a man. He's killed people. Like, he has made his own children now. Like, he has his own family. I think that you see that, you know, Charles's generation, they just went along with it. And I think, you know, if you do follow the royals, you know, there was a lot of strife there with Charles and that, and he was always kind of seen as a little sensitive. But I think you see that Charles never matured as a father after Diana died, is the feeling that I kind of got. And so he let the institution just kind of raise Harry and William. I think William probably went along with it a little bit more, but yeah, that's one of the things, you know, you talk about, like, he didn't believe she'd actually died. He literally calls it Mummy's disappearance. And that starts on page 31, and I believe on page 131. So exactly 100 pages later, he finally realizes, like, no, she's really gone. And on page 131 is where they drive through the tunnel. So when he drives back through the tunnel where the accident happened. And I found that really interesting. You know, I obviously noticed page 31. I think I actually texted you about it. And then when I read that and realized, oh crap, this is where he kind of realizes what happened, I looked up and I was like, wow, it was exactly 100 pages later.
Yeah, that's wild.
And I thought that was kind of wild. But yeah, the PTSD, you know, and you know this, but people listening don't. So, I mean, I went through cancer as a child and watched a lot of my friends pass away. And I remember going to their funerals, and Some I cried at and some I didn't because I think I was so shell-shocked. And I went through my 20s and college, just kind of going through. And I remember that moment too of like finally being able to call it what it was. Like I had PTSD, I had survivor's guilt. And so I think kind of going into it with that and seeing his words on paper describe that exact thing I had felt, to me, that's what made him so human. He was not just a royal, he was an actual human. And I think that's the thing that we always miss with them. And because I'm like you, I always thought like, oh, well, they knew what they were getting into. Right. You can know what you're getting into and then still come out and be like, but that doesn't mean it's good or healthy. And I think that was interesting to watch him kind of go through that evolution as well.
Yeah. So, okay, to pivot just a little bit, I want to get your thoughts on Camilla. I want to know what you thought about Camilla going in and if this book changed your opinion about her at all.
So Camilla, I honestly usually, before this book kind of felt sorry for her and Charles both. I felt like, maybe they really did love each other and for whatever reasons weren't allowed to be together. And so I was like, oh, that's really sweet. Now they can be together. After this book, I think it said a lot that she's not mentioned a whole lot. I think she just kind of fades into the background. And to me, that says a lot. And so I do think my opinion on her changed. And I don't see her as favorably or as cute of a love story as I would have imagined. I think she really kind of is just the evil, doesn't care, only out for her stepmother.
Yeah. And he's so nice about her, I feel like, in ways that he
doesn't
have to be.
Yeah.
I always looked at Camilla and Charles as like, that's the love story. Like I know our parents' generation, it was Charles and Diana, but now so much has come out about that. And we grew up reading that and watching it implode in the press. So it's like, that wasn't a love story at all. She was a fantastic royal. I think like the things that she went out and did I think she was an amazing human being, but I do not think they had the love story. I think that, and like things that have happened in my life, it's like you kind of sometimes you find your person later or it doesn't work out at the very beginning and then you wind up with them. And like, I just always wish them the best. And I was really excited when Elizabeth really started pushing her out there a little bit and you knew she was about to give them her blessing to marry.
Right.
But now I'm just mad at her. I mean, like I am.
You literally planted stories about your stepchildren.
Yeah.
To make yourself look better. I just can't imagine. Like, I just can't imagine that, and I mean, I think there's one part in the book where they talk about there was going to be a story that came out about her son and they threw, I think, William and Kate under the bus.
Yes.
And I think that's when I was like, ooh, she is out for her and hers, and that's it. And her and hers are her, Charles, and her biological.
And her children.
And that's it. And I was like, man, that is so not what they want you to think and see. And it was, to me, that was really eye-opening. And how they just, even as the grandkids came along, they didn't have time for them. It was always Charles and Camilla. And I mean, good, whatever. You don't have to babysit your grandkids every weekend. But I just felt like, again, they left somebody else to raise their kids and be the grandparents. It just feels like a really weird relationship to me. And it's not at all what I thought it was before this.
Yeah. And the fact, like we were saying, that he just was, it was just something he had to live with. He knew not to fight it. And speaking about things going into the press, this was my biggest Harry problem. Like the reason I just really did not like him for a very long time was the whole thing with him dressing as Hitler and going to that party.
Yes.
And he spent so much of this book not only like apologizing for it, but like taking full accountability.
Yes.
And showing how that experience changed him and made him a better human being.
Right. And I think, too, even in his explanation of William and Kate laughed at it when he called them and said, hey, which costume should I choose? And they laughed and they said, that one's funnier. Again, I think that just shows like what a bubble they're all in. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm like you, and all of the, we've all seen the pictures, and I always thought he was the wild child and all of this, but he makes a really good point. And I think too, we've even started to see it, with Instagram and things, as media has come so far along, and now the son and these pictures are right there immediately. But we also know that that's not real life. That one frame, that one snapshot is not the full picture. They're going to take everything, that, like, the whole story, and they're going to take that one picture that makes you look like you can fit whatever narrative there is, and that's what they're going to run with. And I think I really felt that when it was the Mad Megan, or what did they call her? It was about the flower crowns that the flower girls wore.
Yeah.
Like Murderous Megan. That's what it was. Murderous Megan. Like, she was trying to kill little baby Charlotte, little sweet, angelic baby Charlotte, with some daylilies in her flower crown, because they're toxic, but only if you eat them, and very rarely is it fatal.
Right.
But I remember seeing the Murderous Megan, and I remember the picture, and Charlotte does look like something's wrong, and Megan's staring off into the nothing, and like she just doesn't care. That one tiny half a second snapshot fits that narrative, that Megan is inherently evil and everybody else is obviously like the most perfect goodness that there could ever be, because they're royal. Like, they've got that blood. It's like, come on, no.
And it others Megan even more. Like, it just really spotlights like that she's already different, and everybody seeing her as different. And then things like that happen. And and the whole thing with Princess Charlotte, like, you never want your kid to be upset. And like, I get it. And I was not there, but she was 3 years old, and we're supposed to like seriously buy that she was weeping over her flower girl dress not fitting properly. Do you remember that part?
I do. And I feel like that's called a tantrum. And I feel like every child, no matter their age, has them. Who knows? She may not have gotten her snack or something. I mean, that's the other thing that I just feel like even the palace and they took those things and they twisted them to fit that narrative, because it's easier to make someone that is probably never going to sit upon the throne look like they're bad.
Yeah.
But the one who is, you've got to keep this perfect royal persona about them. And so I feel like that's kind of where that stuff even started to take hold for me. And I was like, come on, y'all, she's 3. Like, let's be honest, I cry and pitch a fit when I don't get fed in time too, and I'm a little bit older than 3. But and so this is probably totally backtracking, but one of the things that endeared me about Meghan was the first time she got to meet Granny, and Prince Andrew was there, and he got up and walked Granny out, and so they were talking about everything and everybody and who she'd met, and she asked who was the servant with Granny. Like, she didn't even know that was Prince Andrew. I was like, okay, she has been all about like her life and like living her life and getting her job done and truly making the world a better place. I mean, she was doing all of this, charity work and things before they met, and then to have that, I'm like, I'm sure she reads her press clippings, but not to the point of some of them. So I love that about her. I thought that was really sweet.
I was talking to my sister about her. Like, we have become huge just Meghan fans recently, but we both completely agree that like we could not hang out with her, that she is probably like a whole lot.
Oh, absolutely.
But I fully support their relationship. They're obviously in love. I really think that she's coming from a good place, and I 1000% agree with him when he says that like the royals do not know what opportunities they had.
Absolutely.
And they've blown it by doing this to them and removing her from like...
Oh, yeah. And I think even too in the Netflix documentary, she cried and it was so pretty. I was like, I cry and look like I'm sunburned, but she cried and it was like the prettiest cry ever. And she always looks so perfect and regal. But I'm with you. I think she's probably a lot, but like, good for her. Own your space and don't shrink for anybody. And I think that's the thing I really loved about both of them and kind of how they're forging their own path now is whether you like them or not, they've been talked about so much. Like, it's
Yeah.
okay. They're good. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of my friends who's like a big royal watcher, who I thought would be one of the ones to kind of flip to Team Harry, and who did not, she told me that she believes that he would take over he would overthrow the whole shebang if he was given the chance. I don't think he has the drive or the desire to like overthrow the like the royal family or the institution. I don't think he cares. I think he just wants to be happy. And he wants his kids left alone. He wants his wife left alone. He wants a normal life.
Yeah.
And he's still figuring out what that is. But I'm just like, I don't think he is like the evil mastermind that some people make him out to be.
No, I fully agree. I think what he would actually probably do is make it more simplistic. I think it's really interesting too, now that all of the stuff about Charles's coronation is coming out. They're talking about how it's going to be scaled back. I think with Harry and Meghan, even in the wedding, like you saw, like their wedding was way scaled back compared to, you know, William and Kate and those types of things. So yeah, I think I'm like you. I don't think he's the evil mastermind, like, wahaha, I'm going to do away with this and forget Granny and everything she did for me and forget Gran and forget all. I don't think he would do that, but I do think he would be like, look, we serve the people and let's give back to all of the people and let's make sure that we are pulling a little bit more of the equality in and not turning a blind eye to some of these things just because they're not pretty. And so I think that's what he would do. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't see him like overthrowing anything.
I had to apologize to my husband in the car on the way home from Christmas at my in-laws because I got into it with my mother-in-law about Prince Harry. Because I just knew she would have watched the documentary, and like as a mom, I was like, she is going to be like, he should have helped those kids and not taken their security. And no, she watched the first episode and was completely like turned off by the whole thing. And I was like, you gotta watch the rest of it. And it was like I couldn't stop. I just wanted to stop because we're opening presents. But I was like, wow, okay, so this is a real Prince Harry's a hot button issue for me these days, I guess.
Hey, same. I mean, I'll be honest, like I love him. I love him even more than I did before.
Yeah.
I don't think my opinion of like William and Kate has changed.
Yeah.
Because again, they're on a completely different path with their lives. You know, those types of things. I did always kind of laugh every time it would be like, you know, Kate came over and she was dressed to the nines and Megs and ripped up jeans and barefoot. And I'm like, yeah. And she still probably looked like she, you know, stepped out of a magazine. But again, she was definitely way more laid back, way less formal, you know, kind of carried over that warmth. And I think too, even in the Netflix thing, getting to hear her mom talk, okay, her mama, I just want to give her a big old hug because you know she's so sweet. And I think you do get that with Meghan, but Meghan's had to be a businesswoman too. And so I think she's got a little bit of that shrewdness that she needs to be successful. And in today's society, a woman who goes and takes what she wants, we all know what they're called and how people refer to them, but she doesn't care because, let's be honest, she got the love of her life, and even after a failed marriage.
Yes, yeah.
You know, I thought that was really interesting, and it's not talked about, but it was almost brought up so negative about her, but yet Camilla and Charles have been forgiven. Like, oh, okay, so we can't forgive Meghan? What? Those were the kinds of things that I was like, it's a total double standard.
Yes.
Whether you like Meghan and Harry or not, I think if nothing else, you can come away from this and see that he is absolutely right. They were given a double standard to live by, and it was not fair. And I know life's not fair, but when it's that blatant and the things that you're not being supported in are then used as weapons against you, that's I'd be pretty pissed too.
Yeah. Well, you got anything else you want to say to wrap us up on Spare?
You know, I think probably, and you're going to laugh at this, but I think probably my favorite chapter was the one where they got their dog, or they got Meghan's dog, a sibling.
Oh, yes.
Pula, I think. And I'm probably probably totally butchering how you say that, but Pula and Guy. And I'm like, of course there's a dog, and it's my favorite part of the book. But I do think that was really cute. And him talking about how, they wanted Guy to have a little puppy sibling, and then their kids growing up and them running around on the grass with the dogs. I love that. And I was like, yeah, every kid needs a dog. So,
and that is the most perfect segue.
Awesome.
So we're going to take a really quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about Mallory, the book club that I keep wanting to say Mallory's book club, because we've talked about this book club for so long, but you're not a founding member,
no,
right? Okay.
No, not at all.
Okay. Well, we'll get into all of that in just a second, and we will be right back. And we're back with my guest, Mallory McCormack. She is going to talk to us about the online book club that she is in. And I am just going to turn this over to you. You know everything that I want to know and what I want our listeners to learn about, because this is such a cool, awesome thing.
Yeah. So, fun fact about me, I am obsessed with Old English Bulldogs. I think they are the cutest, smushiest things on the planet. And I just want to smush their little faces and just give them kisses and just squish all their little rolls. So I started following some Old English Bulldogs on Instagram, and one of them, shout out to Harrison Ford Bulldog, his mom and whom dad, and baby sister, actual non-furry sister, actual human sister. They live in Cincinnati, and his mom does a really good job of, documenting his life. And so I started following him. And so she was always posting about this book club. And the thing that hooked me was they were having an argument in their book club about, do you make your water for tea by using a kettle, or do you microwave it? And this book club, again, bully book club, so Old English Bulldogs, very bulldog-centric kind of book club. A lot of them, one of the founding members is actually based, I believe, in London. I'm probably getting that wrong. I know she works for a publisher in the UK, so which is kind of fun because that's the real book tie-in. And then she has a counterpart that lives here in the States. But the UK members were just appalled that we would microwave our water. Like, that's apparently, God, like, you would prefer Camilla to push you out in front of the press than to ever have your tea made with microwaved water. So I started kind of following along and following the Bully Book Club Instagram account. And I was always like, man, I can't join because I don't have an Old English Bulldog. And then they made this post one day that was like, we welcome everybody. And I was like, woohoo, here we go. I love to read. I love dogs. And I have 2 dogs. One of them, they technically share an Instagram account, but it is at Unorphaned Annie, because she was a little orphan until we got her, and now she's unorphaned. And she has a snaggletooth, and she's adorable, and she knows it. And she poses for pictures. It's great. So that's kind of how we joined. And so what they do every month is books are chosen, and they make sure that it's books. So we have book club members in Australia, the UK, and the United States. So Yaz, the lady who lives and works for the publisher in the UK, she and Brumby, who lives here in the States, that kind of run it, they choose books. Usually they choose books based off of polls that they put out there. What would you like to read for March? Do you want something funny? Do you want a young adult? Do you want historical fiction? Do you want nonfiction? Do you want a memoir? I mean, they post all these polls and kind of get it narrowed down to what the majority is. And then they pick a book that you can get via a way to purchase it or a library where all of the book club members are located. So
that's cool.
If it's popular in the UK and the States, but you can't get it in Australia, sorry, we're not going to read it. And so I think that's really cool that it's very inclusive with those types of things. They also run contests. So if you donate to certain causes, then you are entered into a chance to win, to pick next month's book.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
So they do really fun things like that. But this book club, I think what makes it so fun for me is there are so many of us in there that they have chat groups on Instagram, multiple chat groups just for this book club, because I guess Instagram chats only allow you to have so many people. So we're broken up into groups. Mine is the Wrinkly Wild Readers. Don't try to say that 5 times fast because it won't work. But we're so fun. Like, we have such a good group, and we've 2 members in Canada, Chicago, Florida, Texas, California. I mean, we're all over, and it's so fun because, we all, on book club review day, it's always the 20th of each month. We all like put our dogs in the picture somehow and always tie it back. And we all use the same hashtag Bully Book Club, and we always tag the book club's Instagram account. And so that way it's easy for everybody to go and like each other's pictures and see the creative things and support each other. And it's really fun. I just think it's a really cool way to meet people you would never meet. I mean, I think you'll understand this. Don't talk to people you meet on the internet. Right. And here we are, like, some days those are the only people I talk to. So yeah, I think it's just a really cool concept. And I think, bringing people together, especially during COVID, which is kind of towards the end of COVID, is when I found it and started following them. I thought it was really fun because, again, new way to meet people, being stuck in the house, those types of things. Like, it's just a really fun outlet.
And you post the reviews on your Instagram, your personal Instagram, but also always on Unorphaned Annie.
Yes, I always post it on Unorphaned Annie. For the most part, I'll post it on my personal one. I do have my personal Instagram locked down just because, I mean, people are weird, y'all. Like, let's be honest. So I feel like Annie and Magnolia are the stars of this show. And so they get to go be the faces of it. So one of the things I think I mentioned, how we choose books. One of the original members, I believe, she had a dog named Octavia, and Octavia unfortunately crossed the Rainbow Bridge. And when that happened, she wanted a way for Octavia's legacy to live on. And so, because everybody loved Octavia, right? Like, again, if you love dogs, you probably love Old English Bulldogs. Like, they're just, again, the squish. Like, you can't not love them. It's like little babies and dogs and it's just a thing. So, the founders, Brumby and Yaz, I believe, are the 2 that came up with the idea that they would do Octavia's Fund. And what it is they have this fund, and it's just a collection of money from members. It's not a requirement. It's give as you can, when you can. But anytime someone in the book club has their fur baby cross over the Rainbow Bridge, the book club sends them usually flowers and wind chimes, I believe, in memory of their dog. And I think that's really sweet. Again, just we're all weird ladies who love our dogs and books a lot. So,
and don't y'all do Secret Santa? Wasn't Annie just in here with a shark that she received from?
Yes. So we do Secret Santa, which is so much fun. And holiday cards are huge in the book club too. Like, I think I counted, my husband and I got 7 cards just for us. The dogs, Annie and Magnolia, got 32.
Oh,
I mean, it was insane.
Gosh.
I'm pretty sure our postal worker believes that we have 2 children named Annie and Magnolia, and they're probably like, well, good for them. No, it's our dogs. Our dogs got more mail than we did at Christmas. It was funny. But yeah, Secret Santa's a ton of fun too. And there's only one rule for Secret Santa. You have to buy your Secret Santa a book.
Oh, cool.
And so, like, last year I went and registered for a couple of books. The system we use, you can link like your Amazon wish list and those types of things. So I got 2 books that I said I wanted that I was never going to buy for myself, but I thought they're kind of cool to have. Well, the person that I was their Secret Santa last year, she said for the book, she wanted whatever my favorite book was.
Oh.
And so I was like, oh, that's really cool. So this year I said the same thing. I was like, just whatever your favorite book is. I'd love to read something very different. And so that's the only rule. You have to give a book. You can also send things for the dogs, obviously, and we all do. The dogs love it. Annie and Magnolia love this one blue shark that we actually have 3 of them. We have thrown away 2 prior. So Sharky is very well loved in this house. So they got a new Sharky, meant we could throw the one away that they were trying to eat the strings off of. And so they got that, and then they got what else did they get? Oh, they got this letter to Santa. And the letter to Santa had to be hung up on the Christmas tree as an ornament. It was really cute, but it had a squeaker in it, and Annie will destroy anything with a squeaker. So it just got to be hung up, which is kind of cute though, because now it'll go as a decoration every year, which is super fun. But yeah, again, do the same kind of thing as book review day. You have a day where you post what you got from your Secret Santa, and then everybody you don't have to reveal who you are. And it's kind of fun, the people who don't, because then you get to see if the person who received their gift can figure it out. And they usually always do, which is kind of fun. But we were actually, again, on holiday when that rolled around. So I got to sneak a little early and take theirs and take all their pictures. And it was really cute. So I love it. I love my dogs way too much. And I love books way too much, which I never thought. I don't think that's possible though, on either thing. But like I said, it's just a really fun place to just to kind of be yourself and nerd out about things.
Yeah, and I want to specifically say that the book reviews are excellent. I like to scan through there and see. I always like to keep up with what you're reading, and then I'm like, okay, it's almost time, because some of the books are really long, and I need to know before I go in. I need y'all to tell me that they're really worth the time, and really I have not been steered wrong yet by the Bully Book Club.
Yeah, I think there was one book. Oh yeah, and I'm totally gonna get some hate from people in the book club on this. So sorry, y'all know who you are. Our December book was Little Women. I'll be honest, I've never seen a movie of it. I got about 2 pages into it and thought, yeah, no way. But I didn't worry about my review because I was like, well, I'm not going to hurt the author's feelings because, well, they're dead. So that was nice.
So you ripped Louise and May Alcott.
Yeah, I just basically said yeah, we didn't read it, and I just didn't post anything. I was like, oh, that works. But that is one of the things too, and that's a really good point, because we do have some, and we do try and tag the authors and the publishing houses and those things in it. But there have been some reviews that maybe the authors didn't appreciate as much. And so we kind of have a standing rule as well that if it's 3 stars out of 5, be careful. That's kind of that middle, be right. Careful if you tag people in it. You don't, that's their work, right? They know not everybody in the world is going to love their book, but they're also humans, and sometimes, feelings get hurt. So we try not to do that. But there have been some that they'll tag the author, and it's a 5-star review, and the author will, share it on their stories on Instagram. And that is so cool. And so every time that happens, Brumby, she and each of the chat groups too has kind of a moderator that helps her out because it has gotten so big. And so they'll try and take screenshots of it and share it and kind of keep it for us to go back and look at. And I just think that's really cool. There are also some authors that we've read that do have their own Old English Bulldogs or Frenchies. And that's always fun when you get to see their author pictures and their dogs in it. And obviously we all know more about the dog than we do the author usually. Sorry if any authors are listening to this. If you want us to read your book, maybe go buy an Old English Bulldog or, pose with one. Heck, just, help us promote it. But no, it's cute. Man, there's one, and I love everybody in our group, but there's one, her name is Clever Clementine, and she is a UK girl as well. And man, she could give the queen a run for her money with her costume room and her dresses. And she even, for the trooping of the color, I'm I have now officially taken off my I love all things royal hat and put on books. And yeah, that's bad. But she dressed up, for that and has a throne and things. And it's so
And
cute.
what kind of dog is she?
She's an Old English Bulldog.
She's an Old English Bulldog.
Yeah, and she's adorable. I think this last one, January was a fun month for me because it was either read the Alan Rickman Truly Madly,
which is huge. That was that's the one I was waiting to see the reviews on. Yeah,
I started reading it and then it felt really weird reading someone who had passed, like somebody described it perfectly. It didn't feel like his diary. It felt like his notes from the day. And I'm like, I was like, oh, I was like, I don't know that I can do this. So you could either do that or review another book of your choosing. So that was really fun. And so she reviewed one and she put on this wig on Clementine.
Oh my God.
And she kind of looked like Donny Osmond. And so then it was really funny to see everybody being like, well, he was my childhood crush. I think it's adorable. That's how silly we get with this, you guys. But it's fun. But yeah, again, it's full freedom and there's no pressure. If you just don't get to the book for that month, no worries. Like, you're not kicked out. We've had people that things happen in their lives and they have to take a year-long break from the club. That's perfectly fine. When they can and they can jump back in, they do. And I think that's the other thing that they've tried to be good about is recognizing that I think for me, I was always scared about book clubs because you hear horror stories of like, if you didn't read the group book.
Right.
Or if maybe you didn't like it and everybody else did, you eventually kind of got phased out. And I was like, well, that's a Mean Girls Club. Like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
So I think I was a little hesitant about that. But I think that's one of the things that, they just want everybody to be included. And even, me, my dogs are mutts and they accept us and listen to Annie and Magnolia shenanigans and watch their crazy videos and silly pictures. And yeah, it's a fun place.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. Ever since I started this podcast, like when I was in the planning phases, you were one of the first names I wrote down because I was like, she's got to talk about this book club because like the book community has grown and expanded and people are doing things in these very non-traditional ways now and they're connecting with people. And I mean, it's such a fun idea to incorporate the dogs, but also like, I don't know how much as a reader you've just enjoyed it and how, y'all made friends that way. And
oh yeah, it's just really, it's fun. And you're right. Like, I think books to me are that thing that can take you out of your own head for a little while, whether it's fiction, nonfiction. I think that's my thing I love about it is for however long I'm reading, even if it's just 20 minutes before bed, I get to forget everything and just be and just read and just escape. And that's the thing that really like keeps me coming back to books, whether they're audiobooks or actual hardback books or from an app on my iPad or something like that. It's a really nice escape from reality. And I think we all probably, if you really do love books, I think if you'd forgotten that love, 2020 helped me find it again. And
yeah,
I think we all needed a little escape from that, probably in more ways than one. And so, yeah, I think you and I have talked about this a little bit too. I just encourage people, like, there's so many book clubs out there and I never knew it. And like finding this one now, I know about all of these others and I want to join them all, but I cannot physically read that many books every month. Like I wish I could, but I can't. And so I think, my big thing and big takeaway about Bully Book Club is I found my place for now and my people, and it's kind of fun. And so, I'd encourage others to go do the same thing. Like there's going to be something out there for you. And it's really, you don't know what you'll find and you don't know what you'll read. And I think that's the fun part of it, the surprise of it all.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for telling us about Bully Book Club. I hope some people check it out. You totally should, just to get some, even if you don't want to join, to get some book ideas and look at some cute pups.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to stick around and do book news and recommendations? Sure. Okay, awesome. Well, we will be right back. Welcome back to Check Your Shelf. I am still here with my guest, Mallory McCormack, and we are going to talk about some book news. And I'm so glad I gave her a heads up because she just brought up the most important book news.
Yes.
And we're going to do it last because it is so awesome. So the first thing I have is that I just found out today that Channing Tatum and Roxane Gay are writing a romance book together. Have you heard this?
I have not.
I knew that she was crushing on him via the internet. And he has a series of children's books called Sparkella, and the third one is actually about to come out sometime this year. But so she was just kind of like tweeting these flirty fun things at him, and then they struck up this friendship.
Yes.
And now so this was in Vanity Fair. He said that she has almost a roughed out outline of a story that we both love. We just have to find the time to do it. She's the busiest. She's way busier than I am. Have you read any of Roxane Gay's books?
I have not, but it is one of those things that is on my list to eventually get there. But I'm afraid that it's going to be, I get there and it's like I have to binge everything at once.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to be able to read anything else until I get all the way through. So yeah, I'm excited.
She has an online book club that she started. I think she started hers during COVID, and I follow like what they read in that too. Yeah, she has some really good. She writes a lot of nonfiction, so I'm kind of excited to see what this book will be like.
Yeah, I'm assuming he's going to be on the cover, or at least be the model for the cover, right? Like, I mean, you would think his body, Fabio's head. I don't know. Like, I'm only imagining how fun this could be.
And the next thing I have, are you a Weird Al fan at all? It's okay to say no because I'm not. Really.
Yeah. I mean, Eat It was good. You know, I remember that. But yeah.
I'm Weird Al adjacent. There are a lot of people in my life who love Weird Al. So there is going to be a graphic novel that is a career-spanning anthology of the comedian's songs as rendered by cartoonists and illustrators as they express Weird Al's Yanko visions. And what I thought was super fun, I was a big fan of Mad Magazine when I was a kid, and one of the artists, Drew Friedman, who worked with Mad Magazine, is doing the cover art. And the book is also going to come with a custom art print set and a collector's card set.
Oh.
And the foreword was written by Emo Phillips, who's like a comedian. He's been on tour with Weird Al recently, and I can't remember if this is the first time. Surely it's not. I don't know a lot about Weird Al, but I guarantee you that this book will be purchased for both our personal library at home, and it will probably be a real hot commodity at the library also. So
yeah, get on that waiting list now.
Yeah,
if you want to read it, because you'll probably be on it for months.
So now tell me, speaking of things that will have a long waiting list, the
yeah.
book you want to bring up for book news.
So one of the things, and I think it's because they have a whole royal section. Again, I'm trying to tie everything back to my love, Prince Harry. I love People Magazine. That's one of the news sites I check every morning first thing. So imagine my surprise when I grew up in the home improvement era and loved me some Jonathan Taylor Thomas and thought Tim Allen was the funniest man ever. But I see the headline that in Pamela Anderson's new memoir that she's going to write about something that could have possibly scandalously taken place on set.
Yeah.
Where he exposed himself. I think that's the easiest way to put it. He has now vehemently denied it. I'm interested because, and again, Netflix, they did the whole, I think it was Netflix that did Tommy.
Hulu.
It was Hulu.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's all those streaming services,
Emmy
y'all.
nominated.
Yes.
Short series.
Yes.
Limited series.
I haven't watched it yet, but I will watch it before I get her book, which I believe goes on sale at the end of this month, the 31st.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple of weeks.
Either, I don't think that she nor Tommy were very pleased with but it was fun to watch it, and to see the things that you remember happening and hearing about, and so it was good. But I think it was while it was it had just been released, because I can't remember if it came out weekly or if they dropped all of them at once. It was Hulu, so I bet it came out weekly. But she announced her memoir. It was she's I've got to get my side of this out there.
I love that. I love everyone being ready to step up and tell their side of the story, and I am here for it because hers is going to have some wild stories in it.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I think that one, I just saw the release date for that when I was working on a book order, and I don't remember what it was, but it's
January
soon.
31st?
January 31st. Okay,
Yes.
yeah, I was thinking it was this month.
It's called Love, Pamela.
Yeah.
It's a very pretty cover. I'm looking at it now. Go look at it. It's a gorgeous picture of her. So, yeah.
So do you have some book recommendations for us? Tell me how many you have, and we'll decide if we're going to go back and forth.
Yeah, so I think right now I've got 3.
Perfect. I have 3. You start.
Perfect.
And we'll just go back and forth.
Okay, yeah. So I will start off my favorite book, and I think I alluded to this. The first person who I was their Secret Santa asked for my favorite book. And I'm a Mississippi girl at heart, and I love John Grisham. My book recommendation is actually The Innocent Man that he wrote. It was his first work of nonfiction, and it's how he really got into the Innocence Project. And it's a true story, and it will make you question everything you ever thought you knew about the legal system. But it is probably the most raw, real book I've ever read, and I recommend it to everybody. So it's been out for a while. And there's also, now this one I do know it is Netflix. There is a documentary called The Innocent Man, and it's the story. But the book itself, to me, is so good that when I actually got to watch the documentary, the way he writes and describes the scenes, like where the crime took place, and they show you actual pictures of it, I was like, oh, that's exactly what I had in my mind. Like, he's so good at it. And like I said, you think of John Grisham and law stuff, but yeah, nonfiction and John Grisham are a good thing. And so everyone should read it.
Well, I'm adding that to my list immediately because I love him, and I love nonfiction, and I have never read that. And that was An Innocent Man by John Grisham.
The Innocent Man by John Grisham.
The Innocent Man.
Yep.
Okay. My first recommendation is a book I started months ago, and then just put it down and started. I'm really bad about starting things, and I put it down and start reading other things, but I do not let it go.
Same.
Like, because I'm like, I'll come back to it. That's why my Goodreads, when I started this podcast, my account was a hot mess. I had a book I was reading about Donald Trump, and I'm pretty sure he was still president when I was reading the book. And I was like, I really think I'm not going to finish this, because it was one of those books too where it was like, I had to be in the right mindset, and it was a little bit exhausting, but it was really good. It was one of the Bob Woodward books.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I was like, so the new year, January 1st, I went through my Goodreads and I took off things that had been on their way too long. And I was like, I can start this over if I want to. But Final Girls, I was like, I know I'm coming back to this. And I did. And it was so good. It's by Riley Sager. And it is about, there's a trio of women who have survived like different types of like horrible massacres or serial killer situations, and one dies, and one has been like in hiding, and she comes out of hiding to find the third girl, and they establish a relationship, and then it's like nobody is who you think they are, and everybody has like these deep secrets, and it deals with like trauma and the effects of trauma and things like that. And it was really good. And when I finished it, I was like, well, I guessed how this was going to end. And then when I thought that to myself, I stopped. It was one of those books that every single character, I was like, oh, that's the person. That's the bad guy. That's going to be the villain. Like I did the same thing with Lost. Like when I watched Lost, I would just yell things at the screen because something somewhere was going to stick, and then I could say I figured it out.
Exactly.
So I might have said this person's name, but it was one of many. So that being said, it is kind of hard to figure out. So I'm really recommending that book to people. And that is Final Girls by Riley Sager.
Okay, I'm adding that. And if somehow I maybe one day win one of the book club pick the books, I will recommend that one.
Ooh, awesome.
Is it my turn again? Oh,
Yes.
This is fun. So I think my second one, I was going to save this for last, but I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it because I'm so excited. It's called Joint Custody. And it is one that I just randomly picked up because the book cover had a border collie on the front of it. And I was like, okay. And so I turned over and I read it. And basically, Gatsby is his name, is the dog's name. They call him Gats, and his owner is an author, and his owner's lady friend is I believe she's an editor. And so it talks about how they break up, but the book is from Gats's point of view. And so he wanted them to get back together. So it starts off with his plan as to how he's going to get them back together. And I don't feel like I'm ruining the book, but I will tell you at the beginning it involves a lot of chocolate being consumed by a dog, an emergency vet trip, and then you get into the rest of it. And the thing I love about it, and the reason it's called Joint Custody, is because when they break up, they do share joint custody of him. And so he gets to see what's happening in their lives. And so he kind of commentates back as to what he's seeing. And I thought I had it figured out as to like how it was going to end. Nope. Completely changed, went a direction that I just was, I had no idea. And I was like, okay. And there's supposed to be a second one. So
I was about to ask if that was the series you had told me about. Okay.
Yes. And so there's a second one. And so I'm waiting to hopefully get it in at my local library and read it there. Because I feel like when I start a series book that's from the library, I have to read all of them from the library that I've checked out. So
I kind of love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my second one.
Well, let me see what I can do to make sure that happens.
Yes.
Okay, so my next book, when I finished it, I was like, I'm not going to recommend this book. But then I thought about it for 2 weeks. And whenever I do that, I'm like, okay, so maybe if it wasn't my cup of tea, that does not mean that it's not a good book. And so this was a graphic novel, a nonfiction graphic novel. I went to my graphic novel dude and was like, hey, I want something nonfiction. What do you recommend? And there is an author named Box Brown, and the 3 books I could choose from, one was about like legalizing cannabis, one was about the video game Tetris, and then there was one about Andre the Giant. And I was like, give me Andre the Giant, because shout out to the Alabama Slam podcast. There's a lot of wrestling in my life right now.
Yeah. Yeah, there is.
So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to read this book. And also, I grew up, I'm a child of the 80s, and I remember like a lot of the Andre the Giant stuff. I was kind of a fan of wrestling back then. Yes. So this was like a graphic memoir. And there were parts that were rather like unsavory that I thought it was really strange. A really strange choice to put. There were like 2 or 3 different parts where I was like, why did the author choose to include this? But the rest of the time, you really feel like you're getting a pretty well-rounded view of who he was and how he was, and his, it was like he had health issues, and he was, I don't know, just like, I learned a lot about how the stories are developed, where those stories can come from, like in wrestling, and how much the wrestlers can be involved. I'm saying all this and it sounds like I have never ever watched wrestling in my entire life, but it was really interesting. And I think there's actually a documentary about him out that I have not seen, and it made me want to watch that. So all of that to say, if you're into wrestling, Andre the Giant, nonfiction graphic novels, and you're not like gonna clutch your pearls a lot when you read it, I would recommend Andre the Giant: Life and Legend by Box Brown.
Okay, it sounds interesting, and I'll be honest, I didn't know that you could have graphic novels that were nonfiction. I think that's such an interesting concept. I mean, I know you talked about, in book news, the Weird Al Yankovic one, and I was like, well, that's a cool concept. But now to know that there's others, okay, that's going to be a fun rabbit hole to go down. My last one, and I've kind of gone back and forth on this as to what my third one would be, but this was probably my favorite book that we read in book club last year. And it is The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave.
That's on my list. That was a Reese choice, wasn't it?
Yes. And, you know, to me, sometimes those can be a little too sugary, sweet, easy for me to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's not this. This reminded me a lot of Little Fires Everywhere, with the same, you want to feel good about it, but it's just got those dark kind of undertones to it.
Yeah.
And you can't really figure it out. I did figure it out, but like right at the very end, like right before it was revealed, I was like, wait, is it blah, blah, blah. But then even though I'd figured it out when I read it and read what had actually happened, I was still just like blown away. So yeah, I recommend it. I also believe it's going to become a show.
Yes.
Man, I promise I do more in my life than read books and watch TV and talk about my dogs. Not a whole lot, but I do other things as well. But yeah, if you haven't read it yet, read it. In fact, I think I have a copy. I'll just let you borrow if you need to.
I'll take it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is one of the things I love about your book club is sometimes inherit the books.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think there's actually a whole box of them that I'm staring at right now that you are more than welcome to dig through.
I still have the other black girl at home.
Oh, that one was
the one you loved. So
I
much,
loved
right?
that one as well. Yes, dang it, that was my second favorite book we read last year. For very different reasons.
The one that your actual recommendation for. Tell me the title and the author again.
It is The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave.
Laura Dave. Okay.
Yep.
I knew it was an author that I had I never remember their name. My last recommendation for the month. I'm doing a David Sedaris reread.
Oh, nice.
And I love it.
Nice.
I'm always looking for reasons to reread his books. So I'm reading one a month, and I'm reading them in order, except for Holidays on Ice. I do not like David Sedaris' fiction, and that has a lot of fiction in it. And I'm not going to read that horrible chipmunk book of his. That was the most upsetting book I have ever read.
I was not going to ask, but yeah.
That one I threw it straight out of the rotation. So, but I think by doing that, there were exactly 12. So,
Nice.
I mean, I'm going to finish with Holidays on Ice. So that one's out of order. But yeah, so I've reread Naked. The audiobook and the text copy. The text copy has more stories than the audiobook.
Okay.
And I'd always suspected it because I had read the text copy like ages ago, like after it first came out.
Yeah.
But I've listened to the audiobook like a trillion times. But I kept feeling like I remembered things that weren't in the book when I would listen to it. So I actually like reread it and that was indeed the case, but it's so good. Two of my favorite stories are in Naked. Mm-hmm. And the first is A Plague of Ticks, where he talks about growing up with, he has OCD and Tourette's. Yeah. And his teachers, I mean, this is like in the early 60s, I think, mid 60s. Okay. And they don't understand like what is wrong with him. They just think he's being like an odd little kid. So the teachers, every year he has a teacher it was like, I need to come to your house and talk to your mother. And she'll come over, and him and his mother will have like, the teacher and the mother will have drinks, and he'll listen, and they're talking about like the weird things he does in class and all this stuff. And it's funny because I have diagnosed OCD, and I remember being a kid and being like, what is wrong with me?
Same. Absolute same thing. And now, but hey, you get that diagnosis and you're like, oh, yes, thank goodness. It has a name.
There's like help out there. And for him, like, I love how he ends the story with like, he started smoking and all of it got under control with the smoking. And it was just, he had something else to like focus all of that on.
Something took that energy. Yeah.
It's not healthy, but you know, it worked for him. So, and then the other story, I think it's called True Detective. And it's about how his mom and his older sister Lisa are obsessed with like detective shows. And they always like watch them together and try to like figure out who did it. And they keep notebooks and clues. And then they have a real mystery happen in their house because they have brown towels and somebody in the house is pooping and wiping their butts with the brown towels, so people don't know that it's on there if they don't smell it, and then they go to like dry their hair, and it's like a whole thing, and it's like him like talking about the mystery, which of course his sister and mother are useless at figuring that one out, even though they think they're such detectives, but it's so funny.
Oh, that's amazing. I now have to go read this because I can only. As soon as you said brown towels, that's immediately where my mind went. And I was like, no, surely. Oh, yep.
Yeah, it's going to be brown towels. Like that, that time period, brown towels were probably like, that was like the chicest thing you could have in your house. Was
yeah,
note
towels, to self, never buy a brown towel.
But that's Naked by David Sedaris.
Perfect. I'm excited to check that one out as well.
Okay, what's your last one? Or was that...
That was my three. Those are my
We've
three.
already done three?
I know, isn't that crazy?
Oh my gosh, I just want to talk about books all the time.
I know.
You think I would get my fill of it, being a librarian, but I just don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know me well enough to know I love sports, and I'm going back and watching old games. Like, yeah, it's bad. I get it.
My dream episode is to do and I think I may have mentioned this to you back in my planning stages of the podcast. I want to do a segment on books about sports.
Yes.
Because I will not watch a sport,
Correct.
but I will listen to a podcast about it. I will read a book about it, and I have like a list of books I want to read.
Oh yeah.
So we'll have you back for that one, definitely.
Oh yeah, because there's a good memoir I just finished about a sportscaster.
Ooh, what was it?
It was Jamel Hill's Uphill.
Okay.
I read it in 4.5 hours. I could not put it down.
Do you think I'd like it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can borrow it as well.
Okay, I'll put it in my box of books I'm about to take out of your house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Mallory, thank you so much for being
Jamie,
my guest on this episode, and I know that I will be bugging you again.
Heck yeah.
To come on. Now it's time for book reviews from Oscar.
Hello, this is Oscar, and I'm here this month to talk about my 3 monthly books, Don't Tell the Nazis, The Double Dangerous Book for Boys, and The Mysterious Benedict Society. Don't Tell the Nazis is about a girl named Christia who lives in Soviet-occupied Ukraine. Then the Nazis come to town. They're welcomed by cheers and claps. But then they start forcing the local Jewish people who have been living there for hundreds of years into ghettos. My second book is The Double Dangerous Book for Boys. This one includes how to pick a lock, stories about Greek gods, how to solve a Rubik's Cube, and famous battles in the history of the world. My final book is The Mysterious Benedict Society. This book is 1 out of 4 in the series. It is about a gifted boy named Rudy. One day, his tutor shows him a peculiar ad in the newspaper that reads, "Are you a gifted child looking for special opportunities?" Rennie enters, soon to find out that he's going to be a spy for a man named Mr. Benedict at a school called the Institute. I hope you guys enjoyed these 3 book reviews. Be sure to check them out at your local library if any of these interest you. Thanks for listening.
That's it for this episode of Check Your Shelf Podcast. Be sure to check out the other podcasts on the Alabama Take Network and keep up to date with what's going on in pop culture at thealabamatake.com.